I was so sick of blind dates I could puke. My mom's KPI for me was simple. Get married yesterday. So I did the only logical thing. I signed a contract to fake a marriage with my high school nemesis, Arya Vance. Holding hands, kissing, moving in together, everything was going according to plan. But the second I tried to take it to the next level, she shoved me away. I thought she was a stone-cold queen, but it turns out she's a secret romantic. And me? I'm the guy living off his fake wife, about to blow her entire world wide open. New York City is a concrete jungle full of sharks, and I was fresh meat. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 26, with an Ivy League master's and a stint on Wall Street under my belt. To most people, that makes me a prime catch, a blue-chip stock with unlimited growth potential. But in my mom's eyes, I was last season's inventory, about to be moved to the clearance rack. The reason was my grandfather, a man who, in his prime, was a legend in this city, a titan. Now, at 80, his heart had given out again. In the sterile white of the hospital room, my mom clutched my hand, her eyes swimming with tears. Ethan, honey, your grandfather's holding on by a thread. The only thing keeping him going is the thought of seeing you settled, seeing you with someone by your side. And just like that, with one sentence, she'd nail me to the cross of the ungrateful grandson. So, for the entire month since I've been back in the States, I hadn't done a single productive thing. Instead, I've been on a goddamn blind date marathon. One a day, like I was trying to hit a quarterly target. I was more punctual for these dates than I ever was clocking in at the firm. Debutantes, tech entrepreneurs, artsy gallery owners. I'd met them all, and not a single one managed to cause even a tiny ripple in the stagnant pond of my heart. It wasn't them, it was me. I just couldn't stomach the idea of this transactional, goal-oriented matchmaking. Just as I was about to lose my mind on this conveyor belt of potential wives, my mom called again. Her voice was heavier than I'd ever heard it. Ethan, your grandfather. He's not stable. The doctor said he can't take any more stress. She paused, then dropped the bomb. I had someone reach out to the Vance family. To Arya Vance. You two were in high school together, remember? She's a major player on the scene now. You're meeting her tomorrow. Just do it for him, Ethan. As his last wish. Arya Vance. The name hit my brain like a thunderclap. I nearly dropped my phone. Arya Vance. My high school arch nemesis. The girl who made it her personal mission to one-up me in everything. She snatched valedictorian from me. Beat me out for the National Debate Championship. Even during my student address at a school assembly, she sat in the front row, staring me down with that infuriating little smirk until I almost forgot my speech. We had history. Bad history. And my mom wanted me to go on a date with her? Was she delirious? Or did she just have a death wish for me? But the choked sobs on the other end of the line were real. I pinched the bridge of my nose, a wave of profound helplessness washing over me. Fine. For Grandpa. I do it. The next day, we were scheduled to meet at some coffee shop, so Sheikah could blind you. I showed up 10 minutes late on purpose, a petty attempt to score a point and preserve the last shred of my dignity. Turns out, Her Majesty Arya Vance hadn't even arrived yet. I found a table by the window, mentally rehearsing the quickest way to end this farce. Just then, the bell over the door chimed. A silhouette appeared, backlit by the afternoon sun. The sharp click-clack of high heels on the polished floor was like a metronome, each step landing square on my last nerve. She wore a tailored black power suit that hugged every curve and screamed, "I own you." Wavy auburn hair cascaded over her shoulders. A pair of oversized sunglasses hid half her face, but her full, red lips were curled into that same, perpetually smug, infuriating smirk. She walked straight to my table, slid off the sunglasses, and revealed a face so damn beautiful it could make a man forget how to breathe. Time had been kind to her. The sharp edges of her youth had softened into the confident, lethal grace of a woman who knew exactly what she wanted. Ethan Walker. Her voice was a low, smoky purr, a few octaves deeper than I remembered. Been a few years. Didn't realize you developed such an ego you'd dare to keep me waiting. My throat went dry. The entire speech I'd prepared evaporated. This wasn't how I'd pictured it. Traffic was bad. I managed my voice raspy. Arya sat down, crossing her long legs with an elegance that should be illegal. Her eyes, sharp as ever, raked over me from head to toe. A small laugh escaped her lips. I hear you've been back a month. And in that time, you've dated half the eligible women in Manhattan. What's the plan, Ethan? Are you holding auditions? I just stared. Of course, she goes straight for the jugular. Classic Arya. Takes one to know one. I shot back, taking a sip of my coffee to regain my composure. I'm surprised a big shot like you has time to spare for a charity case like me. It's touching, really. Arya's eyebrow arched, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. She leaned forward slightly, and a wave of her perfume washed over me. It wasn't sweet or floral. It was crisp and sharp, like cedar and coal mountain air. Aggressive. All right, old friend, let's cut the crap. Her manicured fingernail tapped a soft rhythm on the tabletop. I know your situation, more or less. And me? My family is breathing down my neck, and half the city seems to think they have a claim on the seat next to me. It's a headache. She paused, then dropped a proposal so insane I nearly choked on my coffee. Since we both need a marriage to get our families off our backs, why don't we make a deal? Isterte her, dumbfound. Arya, are you feeling okay? I genuinely wondered if she was on something. Us? Married? Have you forgotten how much we hated each other? I'm pretty sure we both wish the other would fall into an open manhole on a daily basis. I haven't forgotten a thing, she said, her smile widening into a sly, fox-like grin. That's what makes this perfect. We know exactly who we're dealing with. No messy feelings, no pointless games. It's a business arrangement. We don't interfere in each other's private lives. We just play the happy couple when necessary. 1 year, contract expires, clean break. I'll even pay you a substantial partnership fee for your time. She watched the storm of emotions on my face, then leaned in a little closer, her voice a low challenge. What's the matter, Ethan? Scared? Scared you might actually start to like it? Or are you just scared you can't handle it? Adare. It was a goddamn dare. And I'm an idiot because it worked, especially with those eyes of hers. Eyes that looked like they could see right through me. The stubborn, competitive streak I thought I'd buried on Wall Street roared back to life. And then there was Grandpa. He was running out of time. This seemed like the fastest, most effective solution. Keep your money, I said, setting my cup down with a firm click. I met her gaze head on. I'm not that desperate. The deal is fine, but we're hammering out the details. Every last one. Arya's smile was pure satisfaction. She reached into her ridiculously expensive-looking handbag and pulled out a pre-prepared document, sliding it across the table. Be my guest, Mr. Walker. I hear you minored in pre-law. Make sure I'm not trying to screw you over. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. How did she even know that? I pushed down the unsettling feeling and started reading. The contract was meticulous, the rights and responsibilities laid out with brutal clarity. It was exactly her style, efficient, precise, and leaving no room for error. But when I got to the section titled Marital Duties, my eyelid started to twitch. It specified physical contact limited to hand-holding, hugs, and kissing, only when necessary and with the mutual consent of both parties. Kissing is necessary? I couldn't help but ask. Arya nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Of course, we have to sell it. If we look awkward in front of family and friends, they'll see right through us. What's the problem? You still saving your first kiss, Ethan? Don't be an ass. I grumbled, feeling my ears get hot. In the end, I signed the damn thing. The speed with which I scrawled my name made me wonder if she'd somehow hypnotized me. Holding the freshly printed marriage certificate, I felt like I was in a daze. In the photo, Arya and I were sitting side by side. She had a dazzling, flawless smile. I looked like I'd been taken hostage. Just like that, I was married to my mortal enemy? A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Walker. Arya tucked her copy of the certificate away, looking immensely pleased. She extended a hand. I hesitated for a second before taking it. Her fingers were cool and slender. You too, Ms. Vance. Day one of our contract marriage, and we were legally husband and wife. That very evening, Arya dragged me back to my family's brownstone on the Upper East Side. The official reason was to give Grandpa a reason to fight. My mom and the legion of my aunt saw Arya and practically had a collective aneurysm. The Arya Vance? The undisputed queen of the Manhattan social scene? And I'd somehow landed her? Grandpa, lying in his hospital bed set up in the living room, did look better. He held Arya's hand, a wide grin spreading across his frail face. Arya's performance was Oscar-worthy. She called him Grandpa with such warmth, peeled an apple for him, tucked in his blanket. She had the old man absolutely charmed. When no one was looking, she even took my arm, leaning her body against mine in a perfect imitation of intimacy. Through the thin fabric of my shirt, I could feel the softness of her arm and the warmth radiating from her. That crisp, cedar scent hit me again. My whole body went rigid. My heart skipped a beat. "Relax," she whispered. Her head turned so only I could hear. "Your arm is as stiff as a board. Are you trying to bruise me?" I tried to breathe normally, to make myself look less like a statue. "Ethan's always been a stubborn one," my mom said to Arya, her voice full of emotion. "You'll have to be patient with him." Arya smiled, the picture of grace. "Ma'am, you don't have to worry. Ethan, he's very good to me." As she said it, she gave me a look so full of adoration it almost made me believe we were actually in love. This woman was one hell of an actress. After we'd run the gauntlet of my family, the ride back was silent. She drove a low-key but beastly black Bentley. "Your performance was adequate," she said, staring straight ahead. "But your body language is far too rigid. We need to work on that." I leaned back in the passenger seat, rubbing my temples. "Arya, why me? Why did you pick me?" The number of guys in this city who would kill to marry her could probably circle Central Park. Why rope her old enemy into this scheme? She let out a soft laugh, not answering directly. "What do you think?" I stared out at the blur of city lights, my mind a total mess. I couldn't shake the feeling that I just walked into a very beautiful, very elaborate trap. The next day, according to the contract, we had to begin hand-holding acclimatization training. The rationale was that if we couldn't even hold hands naturally, we'd never fool anyone who mattered. So there we were, in the living room of her penthouse, a place so massive you could probably host a track meet in it, practicing how to hold hands like a couple of kindergartners. Her hands were perfect, of course. Long fingers, neatly trimmed nails with a healthy pink sheen. My own hands suddenly felt clumsy and awkward. "Are you planning on taking my pulse, Dr. Walker?" Arya drawled, looking at the way my fingers were hovering tentatively over hers. I took a deep breath, said screw it, and displaced my fingers through hers. Interlocked. Her hand was smaller than I expected, completely enveloped in mine. The moment our skin touched, a strange jolt, like a static shock, shot up my arm. My heart stuttered. I instinctively tried to pull away, but she tightened her grip. "Don't move," she commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Just get used to it." And so we sat there, on her ridiculously expensive sofa, for nearly half an hour, holding hands, staring out the city skyline, not saying a word. The air was thick with a bizarre mix of awkwardness and something else. Something almost like intimacy. I could smell her perfume, feel the warmth of her palm, and hear the frantic thumping of my own heart. This was so damn weird. Day 3, she pushed her luck. "Today we practice kissing." She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. I nearly shot off the sofa. "Adia, don't you think you're going too far?" "Too far?" She crossed her arms, watching me with an infuriatingly calm expression. Article 3, Section 2 of the contract. Kissing is required when necessary. Unless you'd rather wait and have your first attempt in front of an audience, letting your grandfather and your mom see what a sham this is. She always knew exactly where to stick the knife. I was speechless, my chest heaving. Or, she said, taking a slow step towards me, then another, until our bodies were almost touching. She tilted her head up to look at me, her eyes glinting with a challenge, and something playful. "Are you just scared?" Her red lips were inches from mine. I could feel her breath on my chin. My own breath hitched. My throat was sandpaper. All the blood in my body seemed to be rushing south. Damn it, this woman was a witch. In one swift movement, I wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her flush against me. I could feel every curve of her body and the sudden, frantic beat of her heart against my chest. "Scared of what?" I growled, lowering my head until our faces were only a breath apart. Our eyes locked. The air crackled. I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. It was gone in an instant, but I'd seen it. So, she got nervous too. For some reason, that knowledge pleased me immensely. I didn't hesitate. I crashed my lips onto hers. They were even softer than I'd imagined, cool to the touch, with the faint, sweet taste of her lipstick. It started as a battle, a clash of lips driven by pride and a need to prove a point. But then, things spiraled out of control. She seemed to hesitate for a second, then her lips softened, and she began to kiss me back, clumsy but willing. The kiss deepened, becoming hotter, more desperate. It was like she cast a spell on me. My instincts took over. I tangled a hand in her hair, tilting her head back as I deepened the kiss even more. The only sounds in the vast living room were our ragged breaths and the wet slick of our mouths moving together. In the heat of the moment, my other hand started a slow, exploratory journey down the curve of her waist. Just as my fingers were about to brush against more sensitive territory, Arya suddenly snapped back to reality. She shoved me away hard. She was breathing heavily, her face flushed, her eyes a mix of outrage and something else I couldn't decipher. "Ethan," she gasped, her chest rising and falling. "The contract specifies necessary contact. You crossed the line." I looked at her swollen, glistening lips, at the way she was trying so hard to regain her composure, even though she was clearly affected. A wicked combination of anger and a primal sense of conquest surged through me. I took a step forward, trapping her between me and the sofa. My voice was a low growl, rough from the kiss. "You started this, Arya. What's the matter? You can dish it out, but you can't take it." She glared up at me, her beautiful eyes shimmering with moisture, the corners slightly red. For a split second, she looked almost vulnerable, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual queenly mask. She scoffed. "I'm trying to have a professional, contractual relationship here, and you're turning it into a bad romance novel." Her words hit me like a splash of cold water. A professional relationship? Between us? The idea was so ridiculous coming from her lips. "It's a contract marriage, a means to an end. Don't talk to me about romance." I sneered, trying to hide the turmoil inside me. "Then stick to the damn contract," she snapped, pushing past me. She smoothed her clothes and hair, then turned and stalked towards her bedroom. "Practice is over for today. Tomorrow you're coming with me somewhere." Watching her practically flee, I licked my lips, the taste of her still lingering. That feeling of being played, of walking into a trap, was stronger than ever. What the hell was this woman up to? And the most terrifying part? I was starting to realize that I didn't entirely hate being led around by her. In fact, a small, sick part of me was enjoying it. Damn it all. The next afternoon, Arya's driver pulled up right in front of the luxury apartment building where I was staying. "Get in," she said, rolling down the window. Her tone was clipped. Today she was wearing a champagne-colored slip dress with a white blazer thrown over it. She looked less severe than usual, softer, but her presence was still a force of nature. "Where are we going?" I asked, sliding into the car. "There's a reception downstairs for my office. Your attendance is required," she said, her eyes glued to the emails on her tablet. I frowned but didn't argue. The contract did stipulate accompanying her to necessary social functions. The car finally stopped in front of a towering, magnificent skyscraper. For gilded words gleamed in the sun, Vance Industries. I followed her into a lavish ballroom on the ground floor. It was already buzzing with people, men in bespoke suits and women in designer dresses, champagne flutes in hand. Arya's arrival immediately drew every eye in the room. She seamlessly linked her arm through mine, a polite but distant smile fixed on her face as she nodded to people. "Arya, darling, and who is this?" someone would inevitably ask, their eyes filled with curiosity. Arya would just smile faintly, her tone calm but final. "Allow me to introduce my husband, Ethan Walker." "Husband? Arya Vance got married? When did this happen?" "Ethan Walker? Which Walkers are those? I've never seen him before." A wave of hushed whispers and gasps rippled through the room. I could feel dozens of eyes on me like spotlights, a mix of shock, envy, jealousy, and most of all, scrutiny. I kept a calm expression plastered on my face, but inside, I was fuming. Did she do this on purpose? Throw me to the wolves in the most public way possible? Just as I was mentally cursing her out, an unwelcome voice cut in. "Arya, so this is the husband you married in such a rush? Aren't you going to give us a proper introduction?" A man in a ridiculously expensive Armani suit, his hair slicked back, strolled over with a glass of champagne. His eyes, full of undisguised hostility, swept over me. I recognized him. Chad Thompson, heir to Thompson Holdings. Rumor was he'd been chasing Arya for years. Her #1 fanboy. Arya's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Her hand on my arm tightened. Chad, my husband prefers to keep a low profile, she said, her voice cool. Low profile? Chad sneered, his gaze shifting back to me, dripping with contempt. Mr. Walker, is it? Where is it you work? To catch the eye of our Queen Arya, you must be quite something. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. The surrounding conversations died down. Everyone was listening, waiting for me to make a fool of myself. Arya started to speak, but I gently patted her hand. I could handle this. I looked at Chad, a perfectly disarming, almost lazy smile spreading across my face. In a voice just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, I said, Oh, I don't really work. I just got back to the city. For now. I'm a kept man. You could have heard a pin drop. The look on Chad's face was priceless. He looked like he'd just swallowed a fly. Even Arya, the woman whose arm was linked with mine, went rigid. Her nails dug into my arm. I heard her sharp intake of breath. And me? I just stood there, looking as casual as if I just commented on the weather. As if it was the most natural thing in the world. A kept man? Damn right. Living off my wife, Arya Vance. Got a problem with that? The thrill of turning the tables on them like this. It wasn't half bad. After my kept man declaration, the air in the ballroom seemed to freeze for a solid 3 seconds. Then came the sound of stifled gasps and choked off laughter. Chad Thompson's handsome face turned the color of raw liver. He had probably never, in his entire privileged life, heard someone admit to being a kept man with such shameless, refreshing honesty. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You. Me what? I tilted my head, that harmless, lazy smile still on my face. Is there something wrong with being supported by my own legal wife? Or do you have some unique opinions on family law you'd like to discuss, Chad? He was so stunned he couldn't get a single word out. The eyes that had been waiting to see me humiliated were now looking at him with a strange mix of amusement and pity. Yeah, they were definitely pitying Chad. The death grip Arya had on my arm slowly relaxed. Then, I felt her fingertips trace a light pattern on my skin. Was that approval or a reward for a performance well acted? She chose that moment to speak, her voice regaining its usual cool authority, but with a hint of laughter she couldn't quite hide. Chad, darling, my husband has a rather dry sense of humor. Don't mind him. Her words were a masterclass in diplomacy. On the surface, she was smoothing things over, but she was also reinforcing my status as her legal husband and subtly calling Chad a bore who couldn't take a joke. Chad's face cycled through shades of red and white before he finally let out a frustrated huff and disappeared back into the crowd. That little storm had been weathered, thanks to my complete lack of shame. Arya kept her arm linked through mine as we continued to navigate the room, accepting congratulations and enduring inspections from all sides. I could feel it, though. The way she looked at me had changed. There was less scrutiny, more curiosity. I never knew you had such a shameless side to you, she whispered in my ear when no one was listening. Her warm breath tickled my skin, carrying that signature scent of hers. Takes one to know one. I shot back without missing a beat. I learned from the best. Part of the role, right? Being a kept man requires a certain commitment to the character. She let out a soft huff, but didn't argue. I caught the slight upward curve of her lips before she turned away. Halfway through the reception, there was a signing ceremony for one of Vance Industries' major new projects. As CEO, Arya had to go on stage and give a speech. She released my arm, smoothed her dress, and walked to the podium with effortless grace. The spotlight found her, making the champagne-colored dress shimmer. Wherever she stood, that was the center of the universe. Confident, radiant, in complete control. I leaned against a bar in the corner, a glass of champagne in my hand, watching her from afar. I had to admit, Arya Vance in her element was a dangerously attractive woman. Her speech was short, powerful, and impeccably delivered. The room erupted in applause. Just as she gave a slight bow and prepared to step down, disaster struck. Behind the stage, a lighting technician stumbled over a cable. In his flailing attempt to catch his balance, he sent a heavy spotlight toppling from its stand. The light fixture swung through the air, heading straight for the stage, right where Arya was standing. "Look out! Arya!" A collective gasp went through the crowd. Arya obviously heard the commotion. She looked up, her face paling as she saw the dark shape hurtling towards her. She tried to step back, but her heel caught, her movement fatally slow. It all happened in a split second. While everyone else was still shouting, I moved. It wasn't a conscious thought. It was pure instinct. My years on Wall Street had been stressful, and my release had been intense Krav Maga training. My reaction time was better than most. A blur of motion. I shot through the crowd like a bullet. Just as the spotlight was about to crash down on her, I lunged forward. One arm wrapped around her stiff, slender waist, spinning her out of the way. With my other arm, I shot upwards, using the outside of my forearm to block the falling fixture. Thud! A heavy, sickening crunch. I'd managed to deflect the spotlight's trajectory. It scraped past us, smashing onto the floor in a shower of glass and metal. A sharp, searing pain shot through my arm. I probably tore something, but I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was the woman in my arms. She was completely rigid, her face pale with shock. Her eyes, usually so sharp and confident, were wide with fear and a startling vulnerability. Her hands were clutching my shirt, her knuckles white. "It's okay," I said, my voice softer than I intended. She looked up at me, her expression a mess of conflicting emotions. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The ballroom was dead silent. Everyone was stunned. Security rushed the stage, grabbing the terrified technician, and the room exploded into a cacophony of noise. My God, that was close. Was that Arya's husband? He was so fast. Did you see him block it with his arm? A real-life hero. That was incredible. The looks I was getting now were a far cry from the pitying glances I'd received earlier. Arya finally seemed to snap out of it. She let go of my shirt and took a small step back, though she was still leaning on me for support. She took a deep breath, tried to regain her composure, but the blush creeping up from her neck betrayed her. "Your arm," she said, her eyes fixed on the arm I'd used to block the light. I flexed my wrist, trying to play it cool. "It's fine. Nothing a little ice won't fix." In reality, it hurt like a bitch. But now was not the time to be a wimp. Arya didn't say anything else, but the look in her eyes deepened. She turned to the crowd, her CO mask firmly back in place, and began calmly directing the cleanup and reassuring her guests. But everyone in that room saw it. After what had just happened, the relationship between her and her kept husband was something else entirely. It wasn't just a rich woman and her boy toy anymore. It had the definite flavor of a ride-or-die partnership. The reception ended early. The ride back was even quieter than the ride there. Arya drove, her hands steady on the wheel. After a long time, she finally spoke. "Thank you." Her voice was soft but clear. I leaned my head back against the seat, my eyes closed. "Emma," was all I said. "Have you had training?" she asked. "Yeah. Picked up a few things back in the day," I said vaguely. She fell silent again. It wasn't until we were parked in front of her building that she turned to me, killing the engine. In the dim light of the dashboard, her profile was exquisite, her eyes shining. "Ethan," she said, her voice serious, "thank you. For today. Not just for what happened at the reception, but for what you did with Chat." I opened my eyes and met her gaze. A small smile played on my lips. "What? You think I was defending your honor? I was just protecting my investment. If you look bad, I look bad. It's bad for business." Arya stared at me for a moment. Then a genuine, beautiful smile broke across her face. She shook her head. "You're impossible." She got out of the car, and I followed. As we walked to the elevator, she suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Your arm. Is it really okay?" she asked again. "It's fine. Want to check for yourself?" I said, holding it out, half joking. I expected a sarcastic comeback, or for her to just ignore me. Instead, she stepped forward and gently took my wrist. Her fingers were cool and delicate as she carefully inspected the swelling area. "It's bruised," she concluded, looking up at me, her expression unreadable. "Come on, I'll put something on it." I just stared at her. This wasn't in the contract. Was medical care part of the deal? But for some reason I couldn't explain, I didn't refuse. I followed her up to that vast, luxurious penthouse and watched as she retrieved a first aid kit. She moved with a surprising efficiency, finding a medicated spray and some ointment. "Sit," she said, pointing to the sofa. I did as I was told. She knelt in front of me and gently rolled up my sleeve, revealing the angry red welt on my forearm. Her touch was light. As she sprayed the medicine, she blew on it softly to cool the sting. The warm puff of her breath on my skin sent a shiver down my spine. From my angle, I could see the curve of her long eyelashes, the perfect slope of her nose, and those lips, the same lips I had kissed just that morning. The air grew thick with a tension that had nothing to do with my injury. Arya, I said, my voice suddenly hoarse. Is this you being concerned about me? Her hand stilled for a fraction of a second. She didn't look up. You got hurt because of me. It's my responsibility. Just responsibility? I pressed. She finally looked up. Her eyes were dark and deep, like pools of ink. A slow, familiar smirk played on her lips. What else would you like it to be, Mr. Walker? There she was again, throwing my own question back at me. I looked down at her, so close, and that feeling of being expertly played, of being led around by the nose, flared up again. I leaned down abruptly, closing the distance between us. Our noses were almost touching. She flinched back, startled. I saw that flicker of panic in her eyes again, but she quickly suppressed it, her gaze turning challenging. Arya, I said, my eyes locked on hers. Stop answering my questions with questions. A contract is a contract. But this isn't in the contract. Her breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling. We stayed like that for a long moment, locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, she gently pushed me back and stood up, her voice regaining its cool composure. All done. It's late. You should go. A clean dismissal. I stood up, rolling down my sleeve. But I saw it, the faint blush on the tips of her ears. The frustration I'd felt just moments before evaporated. This woman was all bark and no bite. All right, I said, heading for the door. Just before I left, I paused and looked back at her. So, what's on the agenda for tomorrow? More kissing practice. Arya's face was priceless. Get out. I grinned as I closed the door behind me. Walking down the silent hallway, I looked at my arm, at the carefully tended wound. The air around me still smelled faintly of cedar and cold mountain air. After leaving Arya's penthouse, the cool night air made the throbbing in my arm feel more acute. That woman, gentle when she was patching me up, but ruthless when she was kicking me out. I glanced down at the bruised skin, but a smile tugged at my lips anyway. Back in my own sterile, soulless apartment, my phone rang. It was my mom. The second I picked up, her tearful, excited voice flooded the line. Ethan, oh, my wonderful boy, you're a miracle worker. Your grandfather. He saw the pictures of you and Arya, and he heard about how you protected her at the party. He got so happy his condition stabilized. The doctor is calling it a miracle. Mom, calm down, I said. I can't calm down. You should have seen him holding your father's hand, saying the Walkers finally have a wonderful daughter-in-law, saying you've grown up and know how to take care of someone. Ethan, you and Arya. You're for real, right? You're not just putting on a show for him, are you? My stomach clenched, but my voice was steady. Mom, what are you talking about? The marriage certificate is real. We're good. Oh, good. She rambled on for another 5 minutes, the gist of it being that I had to treat Arya right and not screw this up. Finally, she lowered her voice conspiratorially. That Arya, she seems tough on the outside, but she's got a soft heart. You need to be the one to give in sometimes. Women like to be courted. I hung up and rubbed my temples. Courting Aryavanche. The mental image of me showing up with a bouquet of roses and saying, honey, please don't be mad, made me shudder. The degree of difficulty was off the charts. But the news about Grandpa was genuinely good. It seemed this whole marriage for his health scheme was actually working. The next morning, I was woken up by my doorbell. I stumbled to the door, hair a mess, still in my pajamas, expecting a delivery. Instead, I found two impeccably dressed people in what looked like high-end designer uniforms, complete with white gloves. Behind them, assistants were wheeling in racks of brand-new men's clothing. Mr. Walker, good morning. Ms. Vance sent us. We're here to organize your wardrobe and deliver the new season's collection, the lead person said with a polite but firm smile. I just stood there, my sleep-addled brain struggling to process. Ms. Vance? Arya, what the hell was she playing at? Before I could react, the highly efficient team swarmed into my apartment, and launched a full-scale assault on my half-empty closet. They expertly folded and stored my sad collection of t-shirts and jeans, then began filling the space with tailored suits, crisp shirts, casual wear, and even underwear and accessories, all arranged by color and style. I stared at my instantly transformed closet, which now looked like a page out of GQ. I was completely baffled. Ms. Vance selected these based on your measurements. They should all fit perfectly, the manager said, handing me a tablet with detailed style guides. She said that as her husband, your appearance is a reflection of her taste and cannot be neglected. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, rumpled pajamas, bedhead, then back at the closet full of clothes with price tags I could probably pay my rent for a year. A strange, undeniable feeling washed over me. I was being kept. This whole kept man thing was getting uncomfortably real. No sooner had the fashion squad departed than my doorbell rang again. This time, it was a stern-looking woman in her 40s, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. Mr. Walker, good morning. I am Ms. Vance's personal assistant. You can call me Ms. Chun. She has arranged your schedule for the day. Ms. Chun handed me a beautifully printed itinerary. At 10 a.m., a driver will take you to the Summit Club. Ms. Vance will be waiting for you there to play a round of golf with several important partners. At 3 p.m., you will accompany her to a private art exhibition. At 7 p.m., there is a family dinner. My head was starting to hurt as I scanned the packed schedule. And what if I say I'm busy? I asked, making a last-ditch effort at rebellion. Ms. Chun pushed her glasses up her nose and gave me a practiced, professional smile. Ms. Vance said that if you refuse, she will come and escort you personally. Also, considering your arm may be sore, she specifically instructed that you are to relax and observe during the golf game. I was speechless. She was even using my injury as leverage to control my schedule. Was her need for control this pathological? In the end, I gave in, not because I was scared of her coming to escort me, but because I remembered my mom's words about courting her and the good news about Grandpa. Fine. I play along. It was all part of the act. At 10 o'clock sharp, the driver dropped me off at the Summit Club. It was the kind of place you only see in movies. Manicured lawns, hushed quiet, and security that could rival a military base. Arya was already there. She'd changed into a white athletic outfit, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. With her sun visor and sunglasses, she looked less like a corporate shark and more like a sun-kissed athlete. She was chatting and laughing with a few distinguished-looking older men and women, her golf swing a thing of perfect, fluid grace. She saw me and waved me over. As I approached, she very naturally reached out and straightened my collar, which wasn't even crooked, her voice a playful mix of affection and complaint. What took you so long? Mr. Lee and Mr. Long have been waiting. The partner's eyes immediately turned to me, friendly but curious. So, this is Mr. Walker, a very handsome young man. Arya, you're a lucky woman. A perfect match. I heard about what happened yesterday. A real hero. I smiled politely while internally rolling my eyes at Arya's ever-improving acting skills. You're all too kind. Just a reflex. It's nothing compared to the work Arya puts into running a company this size, I said, deflecting the praise back to her. She glanced at me, her expression hidden behind her sunglasses, but the curve of her lips told me she appreciated the move. She had me settle into a comfortable lounge chair under a large umbrella, ordered me drinks and snacks, and then went back to her game. I was more than happy to relax, watching her command the course and effortlessly handle these old business tycoons. The sun was warm, a gentle breeze was blowing. If it weren't for the dull ache in my arm and the bizarre nature of my marriage, it would have been a perfect day. Just as I was starting to drift off, a smug voice interrupted my peace. Well, if it isn't Queen Arya's boy toy, all by your lonesome? You'd think she'd pay a little more attention to her new husband. I opened my eyes to see a guy a few years younger than me, dressed in a loud, flashy golf outfit. He sat down, uninvited in the chair next to me, a drink in his hand and a look of pure contempt on his face. Here we go again. Arya really did attract all the flies. She likes watching me relax, I said lazily, taking a sip of my club soda. My casual attitude seemed to annoy him. He scoffed. Dude, drop the act. We all know what's going on here. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. But a piece of advice. Know your place. If you're going to live off a woman, at least have the decency to act the part. Don't start thinking you're actually somebody. I set my glass down and turned to face him, my expression unreadable. Oh, and what, in your expert opinion, does acting the part entail? He thought I was backing down and got even cockier. It's simple. Know when to make yourself scarce. Don't get in the way of her social life. And don't get any bright ideas. A guy like you, once she gets tired of you, she'll toss you out with the trash. His words were getting uglier. I slowly sat up, my gaze calm and steady, until his smug expression started to falter. Are you done? I asked. Yeah, so what if I am? He said, trying to sound tough. A smile spread across my face, but this one was cold. First, I said, holding up a finger, Arya and I are legally married. What you just said could be considered slander. I could sue you. His face paled slightly. Second, I held up another finger. What bright ideas are you talking about? Whatever I think about my own wife is my business. But you, an outsider, running your mouth about my wife's private life, don't you think you're overstepping? You. He shot to his feet, his face red with anger. The commotion drew the attention of Arya and her group. She frowned, put down her club, and walked over. Spencer, is there a problem? She asked, her voice cold and commanding. The guy, Spencer, immediately deflated. Arya, I was just chatting with Mr. Walker. Chatting. Her eyes flicked from the drink in his hand to me, sitting calmly, then back to him. Her gaze was sharp. It didn't sound like chatting to me. Spencer, just because my husband is a nice guy doesn't mean anyone can disrespect him. I suggest you apologize. Spencer looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe Arya would publicly humiliate him for a contract husband. Arya, apologize, she repeated, her voice even colder. The other business leaders had gathered around, their silent judgment adding to the pressure. Spencer's face turned from red to white and back again. Finally, under the weight of her glare, he mumbled a grudging, sorry. I smiled and waved a dismissive hand. It's fine. He's young. People say stupid things. Spencer looked like he was about to have an aneurysm before he finally scurried away. Arya turned to me, the ice in her eyes melting into something that looked a lot like concern. He didn't do anything to you, did he? What could he do to me? I stood up, stretching my sore arm, and signed dramatically. It's just, being a kept man is surprisingly hard on the arms. She stared at me for a second, then realization dawned, and she burst out laughing. It was a beautiful, genuine laugh that seemed to light up the whole fairway. Even the old guys with her looked momentarily stunned. You're impossible, she said, swatting my arm playfully, but there was no heat in it, only a warmth that made her eyes sparkle. She very naturally took my arm again and turned back to her guests. Mr. While my apologies, this one of mine can be a bit of a handful. Shall we continue? The partners, all seasoned veterans of social maneuvering, immediately smoothed things over. But their eyes, when they looked at me, held a new kind of respect. I was no longer just a boy toy or a shield. I was a person of interest, someone to be taken seriously. For the rest of the day, at the golf course and later at the art exhibit, Arya kept her arm linked through mine. She would murmur details about the artists and paintings, and if I showed interest in a piece, she would stop and discuss it with me. I discovered that, setting aside our old rivalry, she had a genuinely impressive knowledge and passion for art. That evening, we had family dinner at my family's brownstone. Arya slipped back into her role as the perfect daughter-in-law, charming my parents and grandfather. The mood was light and happy. Seeing the color back in my grandfather's cheeks and the joy in his eyes, the last of my resentment about being managed by Arya melted away. Maybe this ridiculous fake marriage wasn't so bad after all. After dinner, Arya used the excuse of an early morning meeting to politely decline my mother's invitation to stay the night, and we left. In the car, she leaned back against the seat and closed her eyes, looking tired. Thank you for today, she said suddenly. For what? Play my part? Not embarrassing you? I asked, watching the city lights flash by. She was quiet for a moment. For both. She paused again. And for not losing your temper with Spencer. I turned and looked at her profile in the dim light. Arya, did you really think I was that hot-headed? She opened her eyes and met my gaze. I don't know, she said honestly. I guess. We don't really know each other at all. She was right. High school rivals. Contract spouses. There was a decade of blank space and a mountain of legal paperwork between who we were and who we were pretending to be. Then let's get to know each other, I said, the word surprising even me. Arya looked at me, her expression unreadable, before closing her eyes again and murmuring a soft, "Okay." After the golf course incident, the sharp competitive edge between Arya and me seemed to soften. In its place was a delicate, exploratory balance. She still filled my schedule with her Arya logic, all under the guise of building marital chemistry to handle more complex situations. And after my initial resistance, I'd found a way to enjoy it. For example, today's activity was accompanying her to a high-end home goods store. A justification? Her penthouse, while luxurious, lacked a lived-in feel. We needed to buy some cozy items in case my parents or her family decided on a surprise visit. I was skeptical. Her living room was so vast and minimalist. A dinosaur skeleton would look more at home than a throw pillow. But I went anyway. I was curious to see what the Queen of Manhattan considered cozy. The moment we walked into the store, which billed itself as a premier lifestyle concept gallery, I understood. Their definition of cozy came with a price tag that could give you a heart attack. A single, unremarkable coffee mug cost more than most people's monthly car payments. Arya, however, was in her element. Dressed down in a simple white knit sweater and jeans, her hair loosely tied up, she actually looked a bit like a new wife excited to decorate her home. She picked up a bizarrely shaped lamp. "What do you think of this?" For the corner of the study. The light would be soft. I glanced at the price. I could buy a truckload of lamps for that. It's unique. The price certainly is an eye-opener. She shot me a look, put the lamp down, and picked up a set of bone china plates. "How about these? The pattern is elegant." I stroked my chin. "The plates are nice. I just wonder if food tastes like a Michelin-starred meal when you eat off them." "Ethan," she finally snapped, putting the plates down and planting her hands on her hips. "Can you please be serious?" "I'm being serious," I said, feigning innocence. "I'm seriously evaluating the cost-benefit analysis of these items and whether they can truly enhance the coziness of your home." She fought a smile and stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Don't forget the contract. We're a loving couple out shopping for our home. You're supposed to show interest, not act like a cynical critic." "Oh," I said, my face a mask of sudden realization. I dutifully picked up a fuzzy pillow that looked like a potato. "What about this one? If I hold this while watching TV, will it make me look more harmless and domesticated?" Arya looked from the ugly, cute potato pillow to my deadpan expression and finally broke, letting out a laugh and swatting my shoulder. "You're infuriating." The playful tap, the easy laughter, the air between us suddenly felt warmer. A passing sales associate smiled at us, a knowing look on her face. Watching her laugh, her eyes crinkling at the corners, I felt something shift inside me. Beneath the corporate killer, there was this vibrant, playful woman. Just as the mood was getting comfortable, an unwelcome, overly cheerful voice cut in. "Arya, is that really you?" We both turned. A woman in a head-to-toe Chanel suit, carrying a Birkin bag, was rushing towards us, a fake smile plastered on her face. Arya's smile faded slightly, but she remained polite. "Vivian, it's been a while." "Oh, darling, none of that. Call me Vivian." The woman, Vivian, grabbed Arya's hand, but her eyes were scanning me like a predator. "And this must be your husband. My, am I so handsome? No wonder you managed to snag the most unattainable woman in New York." "This is Ethan," Arya said simply, her tone cool. "Ethan, so nice to meet you." Vivian gushed, extending a hand. "I'm Vivian Lynch. We were in high school with Arya. I've heard so much about you." I shook her hand politely. Her two friends swarmed in. "Arya, are you two decorating a new home? How sweet." "So, Ethan, what do you do?" "Marrying our Arya. You must be a big deal." They were like a pack of hyenas, feigning friendliness while trying to dig up any dirt they could find on Arya's mystery husband. Arya's jaw tightened. Her hand on my arm gripped a little harder. She was clearly annoyed. Seeing her discomfort, my mischievous side kicked in. Time for another kept man performance. I put on my best shy, slightly helpless smile. "You ladies are too kind. I'm just a regular guy, nothing special. Right now, my main job is supporting Arya, so she can focus on her career without any worries. The words were vague, but combined with my demeanor, they painted a clear picture. House husband. Vivian's eyes lit up. She'd found her angle. Oh, I get it. Arya is so career-focused. It's wonderful that you're so supportive at home. We need more men like you. Her friends chimed in, their eyes dripping with condescending pity. Arya's expression turned icy. She was about to speak, but I squeezed her hand, a silent signal to let me handle it. I kept my harmless smile in place. Yeah, running a company that big is tough. I can't help much with the business side, so I just try to make her life easier at home. You know, trying out new recipes, tending to her orchids, occasionally looking over some of the less complicated investment proposals that come her way to make sure she's not being swindled. The tone shifted. I was still the house husband, but now I was a house husband with taste, recipes, orchids, and a sharp mind, investment proposals. Vivian and her friend's smiles froze. You know about investing? Vivian asked, testing the waters. A little, I said with a humble shrug. I messed around on Wall Street for a few years. Old habits die hard, but that's all in the past. My priority now is taking care of Arya. Wall Street. Those two words landed like a bomb. Anyone who messed around on Wall Street was no fool. The looks on their faces changed instantly, from condescension to confusion and reassessment. Arya, who clearly hadn't expected me to play the Wall Street card, glanced at me with surprise, which quickly melted into a knowing, amused smile. She leaned against my shoulder, her voice taking on a soft, affectionate tone. Yes, my Ethan is just too modest. He takes care of everything at home, the finances, everything. It's such a relief to have someone I can trust completely. Her leaning in, her words of praise. It perfectly cemented my new persona, the secret powerhouse, the doting husband. Vivian and her friends looked like they'd just been slapped. They mumbled a few more pleasantries and then made a hasty retreat. As they walked away, Arya straightened up, her affectionate demeanor vanishing, but the smile still lingered in her eyes. Messed around on Wall Street for a few years? Mr. Walker, that was a very impressive performance. I shrugged innocently. It's the truth. Did you want me to tell them I'm a freeloader? I was just protecting your image. It wouldn't look good if your husband was a complete deadbeat, right? She huffed, but didn't argue. She turned back to the shelves, but her steps were lighter. A moment later, she pointed at the ugly, cute potato pillow. We'll take this one. I was surprised. You're really buying that? She turned and gave me a brilliant smile. Of course. We can put it on the sofa to remind me that I have a very clever, secretly sweet contract husband at home. I just stared at her. Okay, she won. In the end, we left with the potato pillow, the bone china plate she'd liked, and a few scented candles and a plush rug that actually did make the place feel a little warmer. As we were loading the bags into the trunk of her Bentley, Arya looked at the pile of home goods and said softly, "It's starting to feel a bit like a home." I paused and looked at her. The setting sun cast a golden glow on her face. Her expression, as she looked at our purchases, was soft and wistful, a look I'd never seen on her before. In that moment, I felt something in my chest give way. The dry back was quiet. The car was filled with the scent of our new cedar and vanilla candle, a strangely comforting smell. As we neared her building, Arya's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID, her brow furrowing, and put it on speaker. "Mom, what is it?" "Arya, dear, are you free tomorrow night? You need to come home. There's a situation." "What kind of situation?" "I have a conference call tomorrow night." "What call is more important than family?" "It's your brother. He's gotten himself into some trouble, and the other party is not someone to be trifled with. Your father is furious. You need to come and help." Arya's brother? Leo Vance? The spoiled brat I'd heard rumors about? Arya's face hardened. What did he do this time? "It's too complicated to explain over the phone. Just be here tomorrow night, and bring that Ethan with you. I hear he's quite capable. Maybe he can help." The voice on the other end was a mix of command and desperation. Arya glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "We'll be there," she said, and hung up. The car filled with a tense silence. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice tired. "Tomorrow night, you're coming with me to the Vance estate." "Walking into the lion's den?" I asked. "Something like that," she said, rubbing her temples. "My brother is a screw-up of epic proportions. God knows what kind of mess he's made this time. What do you need me to do? I asked. She turned and looked at me, the passing streetlights reflecting in her eyes. Just be yourself, she said. She paused. Like you were today, a little passive-aggressive. But don't be afraid to put on a show when you need to. I saw a flicker of trust, of reliance in her eyes. And strangely, the feeling of being used as a tool didn't bother me anymore. In fact, I was almost looking forward to it. The Van Cess family drama sounded interesting. After all, I was her legal husband. It was my duty to help my wife deal with her messy in-laws. The next evening, Aria drove us towards the Vance family estate. Unlike my family's historic brownstone, the Vance home was in a far more ostentatious part of Greenwich, Connecticut. The place screamed old money and power. Aria was quiet the entire drive, her fingers drumming restlessly on the steering wheel. Nervous? I asked. She shot me a look, her tone self-deprecating. Why would I be nervous? It's the same every time. Either they're grilling me about getting married, or I'm cleaning up another one of my brother's messes. Sounds like your shield and resident problem solver is going to be busy tonight, I said with a half smile. Don't worry. She took a deep breath, her eyes regaining their sharp focus. Just stick with me and play by ear. The people in that house are a lot trickier than the ones at the party. The car passed through ornate iron gates and pulled up in front of the main house. A butler immediately came to open our doors. We'd barely stepped out of the car when a stylishly dressed young man with a sour expression rushed out. It was Leo Vance, Aria's infamous screw-up of a brother. Aria, you're finally here. He completely ignored me and grabbed his sister's arm. You have to help me. That bastard Coleman is trying to ruin me. Aria coolly pulled her arm away. We'll talk inside. Stop making a scene. Leo finally noticed me, his eyes raking over me with disdain. He scoffed, turned, and stormed back into the house. Aria linked her arm through mine. Don't mind him, she murmured. He's spoiled rotten. I just shrugged. We walked into a grand, brightly lit living room where several people were already seated. On the main sofa sat an imposing man with meticulously combed hair who bore a striking resemblance to Aria, though his eyes were colder. That had to be her father. Beside him was a well-preserved woman with a worried but sharp expression, her mother. A man who looked like a lawyer stood off to the side. The air was thick with tension. Father, mother, Aria said, her voice neutral. Mister. Vance barely glanced at her before his scrutinizing gaze landed on me. Mrs. Vance, however, stood up, forcing a smile. Aria, you're here, and this must be Ethan. Please sit. We just sat down when Leo burst out. You no idea? That snake, Mark Coleman, he set me up. His whole project was a scam. He tricked me into investing a fortune, and now that it's all gone, he's blaming me and threatening to sue for damages. Mister. Vance slammed his hand on the coffee table. You fool. I told you not to get involved with that family. But you never listen. Now look at you, whining like a child. Now, dear Mrs. Vance interjected. Yelling won't solve anything. Leo knows he made a mistake. The point is, what do we do now? The Colemans are playing hardball. Mister. Vance grunted, his eyes shifting back to me. Ethan, is it? Your mother-in-law tells me you're resourceful. What's your take on this? His tone wasn't a question, it was a test. Aria gently nudged my hand under the table. I met her father's gaze without flinching. Sir, I don't have all the facts. Perhaps I could see the project proposal and whatever evidence the Colemans have provided. Mister. Vance seemed surprised by my calm demeanor. He narrowed his eyes and nodded to the lawyer, who handed me a folder. I began to read, tuning out Leo's continued whining. Aria sat beside me, silent but tense. A few minutes later, I closed the folder. Finished. Mister. Vance asked. Yes. And I looked at Leo. When you invested, did you sign an equity agreement? A loan agreement? Or was it just a handshake deal? Leo faltered. It was a partnership agreement. And what were the terms? Equity shares, decision-making power, exit clauses, risk liability. Were those clearly defined? I pressed. He shifted uncomfortably. We were friends. I didn't read the fine print. Friends. I let out a small, humorless laugh. In business, there are no friends. You didn't invest, Leo. You gave him your money. Leo's face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? Whose side are you on? Aria cut in, her voice cool. He's trying to help you, Leo. Let him finish. I continued, addressing the whole room. From this paperwork, it's clear they exploited a poorly written contract. Their project was a sinking ship, and they needed a sucker to take on the debt. Now they're threatening to sue for 2 reasons. 1, to scare you into dropping it, and 2, to squeeze even more money out of you in a settlement. So what do we do? Mrs. Vance asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Vance's sharp gaze was back on me. Do you have a solution? I leaned back, relaxed. Ido, they want to play legal games? Fine. We play back. A project this shady is bound to have skeletons. Questionable cash flow, permits, maybe even in Mark Holman's personal life. I'm sure we could find something. I paused, looking directly at Mr. Vance. The Vance family has been a power in this city for generations. You're not going to let some second-rate grifter push you around. Sometimes, a strong message is more effective than a legal brief. A spark of understanding lit up Mr. Vance's eyes. Leo, however, was still lost. Find something? How? The Colemans are connected. I ignored him and spoke directly to his father. Sir, if you trust me, let me handle this. The Vance family doesn't need to get its hands dirty. I have my own ways of negotiating. Mr. Vance stared at me for a long, silent moment, weighing his options. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Aria's hand, resting on her lap, clenched into a fist. Finally, he spoke. What do you need? An itinerary for Mark Coleman and his father. As detailed as possible, I said. And I'll need a cover that gives me access, something that says I'm with you, but isn't too flashy. Mr. Vance nodded to his lawyer. Get him what he needs. He then looked at me, his eyes hard. Ethan, if you handle this, the Vances will not forget it. I just smiled. I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing it for the woman sitting next to me. With a plan in place, the tension in the room eased. Over dinner, Mr. Vance even initiated conversation, asking about my time abroad. I answered vaguely, neither boasting nor showing weakness. Leo, now that he thought he was off the hook, resumed his silent, judgmental glaring. And Arya just quietly ate, occasionally placing a piece of food on my plate, playing the part of the perfect wife. But I could feel her watching me, her eyes holding something new. After dinner, I stepped out into the garden for some air. A moment later, Arya joined me. Thank you, she said, her voice soft. It was the most sincere she'd ever sounded. It's nothing. I can't have my wife's family getting pushed around by amateurs. She turned to me, the moonlight softening the sharp planes of her face. You were different tonight. Different how? You were reliable, she said, choosing her words carefully. Not the sarcastic, pain-in-the-ass guy I'm used to. I laughed. Is that a compliment, Miss Vance? Maybe, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. I'm starting to think. I don't know you at all. It's not too late to start, I said, turning to face her. Her eyes, reflecting the moon, were mesmerizing. We stood there, locked in a silent gaze, the space between us charged with an unspoken energy. She tilted her head up slightly, her lips parting. I found my eyes drawn to her mouth. The distance between us was shrinking. I could smell her perfume, mingling with the scent of the night-blooming jasmine in the garden. Just as my lips were about to meet hers, Arya, Dad wants to see you. Arya jumped back as if shocked, a flush creeping up her neck. Coming, she called out, and without another look at me, she hurried back inside. I watched her go, a curse for Leo on my lips. Cockblock. Still, that look of surprise and longing in her eyes before her brother interrupted. This trip hadn't been a total loss. As for the Colemans, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a long time. It was time to remind some people that Arya Vance's husband was not someone you messed with. The atmosphere in the car on the way back from the Vance estate was even more charged than on the way there. Arya drove, her focus on the road, but the tense line of her jaw told me her mind was elsewhere. I leaned back, eyes closed, running through a dozen different ways to dismantle Mark Coleman. What's your plan? Arya asked when we stopped at a red light. I opened my eyes. What's the matter? Don't trust me. It's not that, she said, biting her lip. The Colemans aren't a major family, but they have connections in some shady places. Their methods can get dirty. I don't want you getting into trouble over my family's mess. The genuine concern in her voice warmed something in my chest. Relax, I said, closing my eyes again. The best way to deal with a thug is to be a smarter, more civilized thug. Brute force is for amateurs. I heard her let out a small snort of amusement. You sound like you know what you're talking about. I dabble. The light turned green. Do you need any resources from my end? She asked. Nope, I said. You just focus on your work and wait for the show to start. Actually, there's one thing. Tomorrow, have Vance Industries send a formal cease and desist letter to the Colemans. Standard stuff. Accuse them of slander, demand a public apology. Make it sound aggressive, but don't offer any solutions. A legal letter? She asked, confused. They won't be scared of that. It's not about scaring them, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. It's about rattling the cage. When they get rattled, they make mistakes. Arya glanced at me, her eyes full of questions, but she just nodded. Okay, I trust you. Back at her penthouse, the ugly cute potato pillow was sitting on the sofa. In the sterile, modern apartment, it was a ridiculous, yet comforting sight. Want a drink? She asked, shrugging off her jacket. Sure. She poured 2 glasses of whiskey on the rocks and handed one to me. We stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering city lights. About tonight, at my parents' house, she said, swirling the ice in her glass. Thank you, not just for helping, but for not making me look bad in front of them. I took a sip, all in a day's work. I have a reputation to maintain as Arya Vance's husband. After all, she smiled, her eyes looking a little hazy from the alcohol. You know, I never imagined we end up like this. Me neither, I admitted. In high school, I thought you were the most arrogant, annoying, insufferable person on the planet. You weren't exactly a prize yourself, she retorted, but there was no heat in it. Cocky, smug, and thought you were God's gift to everyone. Takes one to know one. We both smiled. The old rivalry felt like a distant, almost fond memory. The truth is, she said, her voice dropping, the Vance family, it's not as perfect as it looks. My father is old-fashioned. He wants to leave the company to his son. And my brother, you've seen him. I've worked myself to the bone to build Vance Industries into what it is today, and in their eyes, I'm probably just keeping the seat warm for someone else. It was the first time she'd ever shown me such raw vulnerability. I set my glass down. So this contract marriage, it wasn't just about getting your family off your back. It was about finding a partner who had no interest in your family's money, but who could still help you fight off the sharks. She stiffened, her knuckles white around her glass. She didn't deny it. You're a smart man, Ethan Walker, she said, her eyes downcast. I admit, I had my own agenda. It wasn't fair to you. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the whiskey on her breath, mingling with her signature scent. Arya, I said, reaching up to gently tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. My own casual intimacy surprised me. Nothing in this world is fair. You proposed a deal, and I signed on. I knew the rules of the game. She shivered at my touch, but didn't pull away. She just looked up at me, her eyes shimmering. Besides, I leaned in, my voice a low murmur against her ear. Who says I'm not interested? The things I'm interested in are worth a lot more than your family's money. Her breath hitched. A deep blush spread across her cheeks. You're drunk, she stammered, pushing me away and turning her back to me. It's late. You should go. I watched her practically flee the room and let out a low laugh. She was so much cuter when she was flustered. But flirting aside, it was time to get to work. The next day, as promised, Vance Industries' legal team sent a blistering letter to the Colemans. It was the first move in our chess game. As expected, there was no public response. But according to the intel from Arya's father, Mark Coleman and his dad had become very active, frequenting private clubs and holding hush meetings. I told Arya to forget about it and focus on her work. Then I put on a discreet but expensive outfit, took the membership card the Vances had arranged, and headed to an exclusive, high-security private club, the same one Mr. Coleman was using to entertain some very important guests that night. I didn't approach him. I just found a quiet corner with a good view and settled in with a drink. About a half hour later, Coleman emerged from a private room with a few other men, his face plastered with a sycophantic smile. He walked them to the door, and the moment they were gone, his smile vanished, replaced by a grim, tired expression. As he turned to go back to his room, I stood up and walked towards him as if heading for the bar. Just as we were about to pass each other, I tripped, sending the contents of my glass splashing all over the front of his expensive suit. "Oh my God, I am so sorry." I feigned panic, fumbling for a napkin. Coleman was stunned, then furious. "What the hell? Watch where you're going." "I'm so sorry, Mr. Coleman. It was an accident," I babbled, dabbing uselessly at his suit. My fingers, in a movement so quick it was almost invisible, brushed against the inside pocket of his jacket. "Get away from me," he snarled, shoving me back. The club manager rushed over. I continued my performance, bowing and apologizing profusely. Coleman, not wanting to make a scene, shot me a death glare and stormed off towards the men's room. I watched him go, the panicked expression on my face melting away into a cold smile. I opened my hand. Nestled in my palm was a tiny, encrypted USB drive. It contained, I suspected, some very interesting information. Back in my apartment, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The encryption was child's play. A few minutes later, I had everything. It was even better than I'd hoped. Not just incriminating financial records, but photos of Coleman with some influential people. And the jackpot, several audio recordings, including one of him and his son plotting to scam Leo Vance. The smoking gun. I made a copy, then edited the files slightly, removing anything that could cause wider political fallout and leaving only the evidence that would destroy the Colemans. The next day, I anonymously sent the edited files to every senior executive at the Colemans Company, as well as to several of their key business partners. I also sent a text to Mr. Coleman's personal phone. "Mr. Coleman, the dry cleaning is on me. You have 24 hours to drop all charges against Leo Vance and issue a public apology. Otherwise, the next data dump goes to the IRS and the SEC." Less than 10 minutes later, my burner phone rang. I answered but said nothing. "Who is this? What do you want?" Coleman's voice was a mix of rage and panic. "Who I am doesn't matter," I said calmly. "What matters is that you have 23 hours and 50 minutes left. That evidence is fake. I'll sue you for slander." "Be my guest," I said with a soft laugh. "I'm sure the SEC would be happy to verify its authenticity for you." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. After a long minute of silence, he finally broke. "Fine, but you have to promise to destroy the originals." "You're in no position to bargain, Mr. Coleman," I said coldly. "Do as I say. As for the originals, we'll see how well you behave." I hung up. That afternoon, Aria got a call from her mother, who was ecstatic. "Aria, it's over. The Colemans dropped the lawsuit and sent a letter of apology. Leo is in the clear. Your father is so pleased. He says it's all thanks to Ethan. You two have to come for dinner tonight. He wants to thank him properly." Aria hung up and looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and pride. How did you do that?" I was on the sofa, petting the potato pillow. It was nothing, just a friendly chat with Mr. Coleman about business ethics. Aria just stared at me. She came and sat beside me, her expression serious. "Ethan, I'm beginning to think I have no idea who you really are." I put the pillow down and turned to face her. The setting sun streamed through the windows, bathing her in a warm, golden light. "Then stop trying to figure me out," I said, reaching out to gently squeeze her cheek. Her skin was soft and warm. "Just know that the man sitting next to you is a little more capable than you thought." She didn't pull away. She just looked at me, her eyes a swirling mix of surprise, curiosity, gratitude, and something else. Something that looked a lot like affection. Suddenly, she leaned in and pressed a quick, soft kiss to my lips. It was as light as a feather. She pulled back, her face flushed. "That's a reward," she stammered, not meeting my eyes, and then quickly stood up. I have a meeting." I watched her hurry away, a slow smile spreading across my face as I touched my lips. A reward? Huh, not a bad reward at all. This whole contract marriage thing was starting to get interesting. And the Colemans. That was just the beginning. I looked at my phone. I hoped for his sake Mr. Coleman had learned his lesson, because next time I wouldn't be so nice. The Coleman affair acted like a stone tossed into the still waters between Aria and me, with ripples that lasted for days. After that fleeting reward kiss, the delicate balance we'd maintained was shattered. When she looked at me now, there was less calculation and more, a gentle reliance she probably wasn't even aware of. Like right now. It was a Saturday morning, sun streaming into the living room. I was sprawled on the sofa, potato pillow in my lap, deep in a video game, one of the few forms of entertainment I'd added to her minimalist penthouse. Arya was at her desk nearby, her laptop screen reflecting on her focused face. We existed in our own separate bubbles, but the space between us was filled with a comfortable, quiet harmony. Every so often, she'd look up, and when I'd catch her eye, she'd quickly look back down at her screen, the tips of her ears turning a faint pink. It was more disarming than any of her corporate power plays. You know, there's a fee for staring, Ms. Vance, I said, not taking my eyes off the game. I wasn't staring at you, she retorted, a little too quickly. I was looking at the glare from your screen. I just chuckled. After finishing my game, I stretched. Arya closed her laptop, rubbing her temples. All done? I asked. For now, she said, getting up to pour a glass of water. There's a charity auction tonight. You're coming with me. It was a statement, not a question, but her tone lacked its usual commanding edge. It sounded almost habitual. Another ambush? I raised an eyebrow. Which one of your admirers is it this time? No, she shook her head. It's a legitimate charity event hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. A lot of older, important people will be there. We need to make an appearance. She hesitated slightly on the word we. Fine, he shrugged. My primary function is to be your arm candy. After all. Arya shot me a look, but it was all humor. Can you be serious for 1 second? I am serious, I said, walking over to her. There are levels to this. I'm the limited edition, deluxe model of arm candy. I can fight, I can bluff, I can play the part. You hit the jackpot, Vance. She finally laughed, swatting my chest playfully. You're such a narcissist. The tap was soft, affectionate. My eyes lingered on her smiling face, and an impulse took over. The mood was perfect. I leaned in. This time, she didn't pull back. She just tilted her face up to mine, her long lashes fluttering, her eyes wide with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. Her warm breath ghosted over my chin. Just as our lips were about to meet, ding-dong. The damn doorbell. Arya jumped back like a startled rabbit, her face flushing a deep red. I cursed under my breath. Who had the worst timing in history? It's probably the dress for tonight, she stammered, smoothing her hair as she rushed to the door. She was right. It was a delivery from a high-end designer with our outfits for the evening. Mine was a classic black tuxedo. Hers was a stunning, floor-length champagne gown, accompanied by a velvet jewelry box. After the delivery person left, Arya opened the box. Inside was a brilliant diamond necklace. This one tonight? She asked, holding it up to her neck. I walked over and took the necklace from her. My fingers brushed against the warm skin of her neck, and I felt her tremble. Let me, I said softly. She nodded, turning her back to me and sweeping her hair to one side, exposing the graceful line of her neck and shoulders. My fingers fumbled with the clasp. The cool metal and diamonds felt electric against her warm skin. The fresh scent of her hair filled my senses. As the clasp clicked shut, I gave in to another impulse. I leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her bare shoulder. Arya's whole body went rigid. She held her breath, but she didn't move. The air crackled with a silent, simmering tension. I straightened up and looked at our reflection in the nearby mirror. The gown, the diamonds. She was breathtaking, but it was the blush on her cheeks and the dazed, vulnerable look in her eyes that made my heart hammer in my chest. Beautiful, I said, and I meant it. She looked from my reflection to her own, her expression unreadable. Thank you, she whispered. That evening, the charity auction was in full swing. The ballroom glittered. Our arrival, as usual, turned heads. The gossip about us had evolved. I was no longer the kept man, but the mysterious, powerful husband. We moved through the crowd with practiced ease, Arya on my arm, playing our parts to perfection. During the auction, we sat in the front row. The items were the usual mix of jewelry and art. Then a sapphire bracelet came up for bidding. It was a delicate, beautiful piece, the stones the color of a deep ocean. I saw Arya's gaze linger on it for a moment too long. Like it, I murmured. She looked away. It's nice, but I knew she wanted it. The bidding started at 30,000. It slowly climbed to 80. 100,000, I said, raising my paddle. The room quieted. Arya looked at me, surprised. 120, a man across the room called out. 150, I said, my voice calm. 180. 200,000. I said it as if I were bidding $200. A wave of murmurs went through the room. The market value of the bracelet was nowhere near that. My competitor hesitated, then shook his head. Sold to Mr. Walker for $200,000. A moment later, an attendant brought the bracelet to our table. I took the box and, without even looking at it, handed it to Arya. For you. She stared at me, then at the bracelet, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something else. You didn't have to do that. Of course I did. I leaned in, my voice a low whisper meant only for her. My wife wanted it. I wasn't going to let someone else have it. Her ears turned a brilliant shade of red. She shot me a mock glare, but her eyes were shining. She took the box, closing the lid gently. Thank you, she whispered. I love it. In that moment, all the other people in the room, all the envious stares faded into the background. The wall of our contract was crumbling, and fast. Later, the band started to play, and the dance floor opened up. Care to dance? I asked, holding out my hand. She hesitated for a second, then placed her hand in mine. I led her to the dance floor. We moved together easily, her body light and graceful in my arms. We were close, her hand on my shoulder, mine resting on the small of her back. I could feel the warmth of her body, the steady rhythm of her heart. You're different tonight, she said, looking up at me. Different how? You're bossy, she said, but she was smiling. Don't like it? It's okay. We fell into a comfortable silence, content to just move together. She relaxed against me, her cheek almost resting on my chest. Her scent was intoxicating. I could feel her walls coming down, piece by piece. Just as the song was ending, a slick, unpleasant voice cut through our bubble. Arya, long time no see. We both stopped and turned. Standing there was a handsome man in a white suit, but his eyes were cold and possessive. Arya stiffened, her hand tightening on my arm. Julian Croft, she said, her voice laced with a distaste she couldn't hide. I narrowed my eyes. Julian Croft. I remembered her assistant mentioning the name. Heir to the Croft fortune. One of her more obsessive suitors, known for his underhanded tactics. He'd supposedly left the country years ago. Julian's reptilian gaze slid over me, then fixed on Arya's hand on my arm. His eyes went cold. So this is the famous Mr. Walker, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. I heard you two got married. Congratulations. His tone was anything but congratulatory. Thank you, I said, pulling Arya a little closer, my arm possessively around her waist. Julian's face tightened. Arya, there are a few things I'd like to discuss with you. In private. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of my husband, she replied coolly. His eyes flickered between us. Then he let out a cold laugh. Fine. Mr. Walker, I hope you enjoy your good fortune while it lasts. He shot Arya one last, dark look, and then disappeared into the crowd. Arya let out a shaky breath. Ex-boyfriend? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. No, she said immediately, her tone filled with disgust. Just a psycho who couldn't take no for an answer. His methods, they're not clean. You need to be careful. The genuine worry in her eyes washed away my annoyance. I tightened my arm around her. Don't worry, I said, my voice low and firm. No one is going to touch you. Not while I'm here. I glanced in the direction Julian had gone, my eyes cold. And as for him, he'd better learn to back off, or I'll teach him what not clean really means. Arya looked up at me, her eyes shining with a complex mix of fear, relief, and a deep, undeniable affection. She leaned her head against my chest. Okay, she whispered. I believe you. In that moment, the contract, the pretenses, none of it mattered. All that mattered was this proud, incredible woman in my arms who was finally, truly starting to trust me. And that felt better than any business deal I'd ever closed. The appearance of Julian Croft cast a shadow over the evening. On the ride home, Arya was quiet, staring out the window. What's the story with that guy? I asked, trying to sound casual. She sighed, a weary, frustrated sound. He's a predator. Years ago, he became obsessed with me. He used every dirty trick in the book, stalking, harassment. He even tried to threaten my friends. I shut him down, hard, and his family sent him overseas. I can't believe he's back. She turned to me, her eyes dark with worry. He has no morals, Ethan, and he holds a grudge. He won't let tonight go. I'm worried he'll come after you. The raw fear in her eyes for me, for my safety, was a strange, powerful balm to my ego. She was worried about me. Come after me? I laughed, taking her hand. It was cold. Do I seem like an easy target to you? She didn't pull her hand away. At the word husband, a faint blush colored her cheeks, but she didn't let it distract her. I know you're capable, but Julian is dangerous. His family has connections to some very nasty people. She squeezed my hand. Promise me you'll be careful. Okay, I said, squeezing back. I promise. We rode the rest of the way in a comfortable silence. In the elevator, the small, enclosed space seemed to amplify the unresolved tension between us. The memory of our dance, the threat of Julian, the warmth of her hand in mine, it was all swirling in the air. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened to her floor. Just as she was about to step out, I slammed my hand on the door close button. The door slid shut, trapping us inside. What are you doing? She asked, startled. I didn't answer. I just walked towards her, backing her up against the cool metal wall of the elevator. I braced my arms on either side of her, caging her in. Our faces were inches apart. Arya, I said, my voice low, I have a question for you, and I want an honest answer. What? Her voice trembled slightly. Are we still just a contract? My heart was hammering against my ribs. The question had been sitting there for weeks. She stared at me, her eyes wide. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The air in the elevator was thick, heavy. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. Her expression shifted from shock to hesitation to fear and finally to a kind of fierce resolve. She took a deep breath and met my gaze. Her voice was a whisper, but it landed like a thunderclap. What do you think? The same damn trick. Throw my question back at me. But this time, her eyes weren't teasing. They were wide open, vulnerable, reflecting my own face and a desperate, hopeful emotion I'd never seen in them before. A low curse escaped my lips. Every ounce of my self-control shattered. I crushed my mouth to hers. This wasn't a practice kiss. This was real. It was hungry and desperate, filled with all the pent-up frustration and unspoken feelings of the past few months. She was stiff for a second, then she melted against me, her arms wrapping around my neck, her response clumsy but passionate. The small space became a furnace. The only sounds were our ragged breaths, the frantic beat of our hearts. It was a long, deep, soul-searing kiss. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. Her lips were swollen, her eyes dazed, her body pliant in my arms. I rested my forehead against hers. That's my answer, I rasped. She didn't speak. She just buried her hot face in the crook of my neck and nodded. No more words were needed. The contract, the pretense. It was all gone. The elevator doors opened again. We walked out, hand in hand, fingers intertwined. That night, we didn't talk about the contract or about Julian Croft. We just curled up on the sofa like a real couple and watched a stupid movie, sharing a bowl of popcorn and stealing kisses that tasted of butter and salt. It was quiet, simple, and perfect, but peace, I was learning, was a temporary state. The next morning, shortly after Arya left for work, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw two grim-faced men in suits. Ethan Walker? We're with the SEC. We received a complaint alleging illegal trading and tax evasion. We need you to come with us. I had to give Julian credit. He worked fast. Of course, I said, opening the door calmly. Come on in. I'll cooperate fully. My composure seemed to throw them off. They came in and made a show of looking around, asking a few pointless questions. It was all for show. They knew I had nothing here. Their goal was to haul me downtown and create a scene. Just as one of them was reaching for a pair of handcuffs, a voice cut through the air, sharp and cold as ice. Stop! Arya stood in the doorway, her face a mask of cold fury. Behind her was the head of her company's legal team, a shark in a tailored suit. She strode over to me, her eyes blazing. I am Arya Vance, CEO of Vance Industries. This is my husband, Ethan Walker. Any questions you have can be directed to my lawyer. You have no right to detain him without evidence. Her presence completely changed the dynamic in the room. The two agents looked distinctly uncomfortable. Ms. Vance, we're just following up on a tip. A tip? Arya laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. She took a file from her lawyer and slammed it down on the table. I have the information on your anonymous informant right here. Shall I read aloud? We can all see just how credible your source is. Her power was absolute. The two men started to sweat. Her lawyer stepped forward. My client will cooperate with any legitimate investigation. However, if it is found that this was a malicious abuse of power, Vance Industries will pursue all legal remedies to the fullest extent of the law. The agents, defeated, left a notice to appear for questioning and scurried away. The apartment was quiet again. Arya's fierce demeanor crumbled. She turned to me, her eyes wide with a mixture of anger and fear. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I looked at her, at the hair that had come loose from her bun, at the raw concern on her face, and my heart felt like it was going to burst. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. I'm fine, I murmured into her hair. Thank you, honey. This time, the word felt completely natural. Arya stiffened for a second, then melted against me, her arms wrapping around my waist. That psycho, she mumbled into my chest. I'm not going to let him get away with this. I stroked her hair, my own expression hardening. This one, I said, my voice low and dangerous, is on me. Julian Croft had made a mistake. A big one. He had come after what was mine. And for that, there would be consequences. After the SEC agents scurried away, Arya remained in my arms, trembling with rage. To use such a cheap, disgusting trick. To come after you. She pulled back, her eyes red-rimmed and blazing. I'm calling his father right now. We'll see how brave Julian Croft is then. I gently smoothed her hair. Easy, I said, my voice calm but laced with steel. Tattling to the grown-ups is for kids. The way to deal with a mad dog isn't to complain about it. It's to put it down. Her anger slowly subsided, replaced by a look of absolute trust. What are you going to do? You want to play dirty? A cold smile touched my lips. Then let's play. We'll see who's left standing in the mud. I convinced her to go back to work, to act as if nothing had happened. She was reluctant, but she trusted me. After she left, the warmth in my expression vanished. Julian Croft had made this personal. First, I had Vance Industries make a series of very public, very large donations to several prominent charities. The press releases highlighted the philanthropic work of Arya Vance and her husband, Ethan Walker. At the same time, her legal team released a statement condemning the malicious and unfounded attacks by unnamed competitors and hinted that they had evidence of a conspiracy. We were seizing the moral high ground. Then, I started digging. Julian's family had a history of shady dealings. And during his time abroad, Julian had started his own little side hustle, a high-stakes, illegal online casino, catering to wealthy, degenerate gamblers back in the States. Bingo! I didn't go after the casino directly. Instead, I acquired a list of his biggest clients, specifically the ones who were deeply in debt and had the most to lose if their habit was exposed. I anonymously sent each of them and their families or employers a little reminder of their debts, along with a simple message: settle your account in 3 days, or this information goes public. It was like kicking a hornet's nest. Panic erupted. My targets, terrified of being exposed but too scared to cross the Crofts, created chaos. Julian's cash flow froze, and his reputation took a massive hit. That was just the appetizer. Next, I fabricated a highly convincing internal memo from a fictional law enforcement source, detailing an international investigation into a money laundering ring that used online casinos, a ring that sounded suspiciously like Julian's. I made sure this memo found its way to Julian's father and the other senior members of the Croft family. Then I waited. 2 days later, the casino's website went offline. Rumors started to fly that Julian had been dragged home and beaten half to death by his furious father. The Crofts were forced to sell off assets to clean up the mess. And Julian was exiled again, this time with no access to the family fortune. The threat was neutralized, and I never even had to speak to the man. When Arya heard the news, she just stared at me, her eyes a mixture of awe and, was that admiration? I was sitting on the sofa, peeling an apple, the peel coming off in one long, perfect spiral. It was simple, I said, handing her a slice. I just taught him a lesson. I paused and smiled at her. You don't mess with another man's wife. It brings bad luck. She took the apple, her eyes sparkling. She leaned in and pressed a firm, deliberate kiss to my cheek. A promotion, she said, her cheeks flushing. I touched the spot where her lips had been. That's it, I teased. She glared at me, her blush deepening. Greedy, she muttered. The Julian Croft affair was the final catalyst. The last remnants of our contract, of our pretense, vanished. We fell into a natural, easy rhythm. We were a couple. We held hands. We kissed. We even started sleeping in the same bed, though for now I was just sleeping. The vast, cold penthouse started to feel like a home. One night, we were curled up on the sofa, watching a movie. Ethan, Arya said softly, Let's tear up the contract. I looked down at her. Her eyes were clear and full of a love and trust that humbled me. It was null and void the moment you first kissed me, I said, kissing her forehead. I did not. That was an impulse, she protested, hiding her face in my chest. And the elevator? Was that an impulse too? I teased. Shut up. I held her close, a feeling of profound peace settling over me. Everything was perfect, and then my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was thin, panicked. Ethan, come home. It's your grandfather. The doctors. He's not going to make it. He wants to see you and Arya. One last time. My heart seized. My grandfather. The man whose dying wish had started this whole crazy journey. I looked at Arya. She'd heard. The color drained from her face. We're on our way, I said, and we ran. The hospital was a blur. My parents were waiting outside the ICU, their faces etched with grief. My grandfather was inside, impossibly frail, hooked to a symphony of beeping machines. When he heard my voice, his eyes fluttered open. A flicker of light, of recognition, sparked in their depths. He saw me, then Arya, then our hands clasped tightly together. A faint, slow smile touched his lips. He tried to speak, his voice a hoarse whisper under the oxygen mask. I leaned in close. Good. Together. Good. It was all he could manage. But it was everything. Arya's tears started to fall. We are, Grandpa, she choked out. We're so good. We'll always be together. He looked at us, a look of pure, unadulterated peace on his face. He squeezed my hand, a final faint pressure, and then he was gone. The world shattered into a million pieces. The days that followed were a gray fog of grief. But through it all, Arya was my rock. She stood by my side, a silent, constant source of strength. She managed the funeral arrangements, comforted my mother, and held me when the grief became too much to bear. She wasn't playing a part anymore. She was my wife. A few weeks later, we were back in the penthouse. Life was starting to return to normal, but everything was different. One evening, Arya told me to close my eyes. When I opened them, she was standing in front of me. In one hand, she held our 2 marriage certificates. In the other, she held our original contract. Slowly, deliberately, she tore the contract into tiny pieces and let them flutter to the floor like confetti. She handed me one of the marriage certificates and held the other one to her heart. Mr. Walker, she said, a brilliant, tearful smile on her face. The contract is officially terminated. From now on, this is the only agreement between us. She shook the little red book. You are hereby bound to me for life. No takebacks. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her, a deep, desperate kiss filled with all the sorrow and joy and impossible love of the past few months. When we finally broke apart, she looked up at me, her eyes shining with a shy, mischievous light. There's something I never told you, she whispered. What's that? The real reason I chose you for the contract. She took a deep breath. It was because it was you. It was always you, Ethan. The infuriating, brilliant, impossible boy who I couldn't stand, but also couldn't stop thinking about. I stared at her, stunned into silence. So, you've been plotting this all along. I finally managed, a huge, goofy grin spreading across my face. Who was plotting? She said, swatting my chest. I just thought, if I had to be stuck with someone, being stuck with you might not be so bad. I laughed a real, belly-deep laugh and scooped her up into my arms, spinning her around. Well, you're stuck now, Vance. For good. Her laughter mingled with mine, echoing through the room that had finally, truly, become our home. Outside, the city lights glittered like a river of stars. We had started as enemies, become partners in a lie, and somehow, against all odds, have found our way to a truth that was more real and more wonderful than anything we could have ever imagined. Me, the kept man? No. I was just a man who had gotten impossibly, irrevocably lucky.